Negative painting in watercolor. I have shared 5 different simple approaches to apply this painting technique. So hello and welcome. I will be demonstrating these paintings on Canson cold pressed watercolor paper, 300 grams per square meter, and it's of A4 size. I'll be demonstrating the exercises onto 4 different sections of the paper. So I'm going to demonstrate the first simple negative painting. Pre-sketched the leaf motif. So I'm just going to paint this leaf motif using the wet on dry technique. Nothing complicated, just a simple painting. I'm going to paint the second leaf motif as well. It's just to show you the differences between a typical negative painting versus creating the light effect using other techniques. I'll show you in a while. Okay. I want to leave this first leaf motif to dry completely to show you the typical negative painting technique. And this one, create the light effects or highlights by lifting out pigments. So you can use a damp brush, as you can see me doing here. So using my damp brush to create some highlights while painting is still wet. Alright, so both the leaf motif painting is completely dry. So as I showed earlier, you can lift out pigment from a wet painting. You may also lift out pigment from a dry painting by using the same techniques, just that it takes more effort. So just use your damp brush and you can lift the pigment. And of course it also depends on the staining level of your paint, meaning if it's less staining, then obviously you can lift it out easily even when the painting is dry. You just noticed here the evidence of how less staining this paint is. So yep, it depends on your paint characteristic as well as also the paper that you're using. So if you're using a very thin paper, you might have to be extra careful when lifting on the pigment when the painting has completely dry, because it can leave abrasion effect which damages your paper, so your painting may look awkward. So this is one way of lifting up the paint or pigment to reveal the light part of your painting, and it looks much brighter, right? You can see the veins are much brighter, and it has created a new look to the entire leaf motif. But the problem is it can be very challenging when you have a lot of painting to do. Let's say this is just one leaf, so it was easier for you to lift the pigment. Let's say you have a bunch of leaves in a bouquet painting, and stressful to lift up pigment from each leaves. And besides that, let's say you have a bigger motif or subject to paint, it's going to be difficult to lift pigment from a bigger motif. So which is why the negative painting kicks in, where you plan your subject of painting well and then you go about painting it with a darker pigment gradually as you progress in the painting. So I'm just adding some blue shade onto the same green mix that I had earlier so that it appears much darker than the earlier green mix. And so I just want to mention that I have pre-sketched the veins. I think you can notice from the screen I have pre-sketched. If you don't wish to pre-sketch the veins on the leaves and you'd like to go free flow, yes, you can do so as well. It's just showing you a very strategic way of doing so, so that you can witness the process on the pre-sketched subject matter. So I'm just going to paint the darker green mix, avoiding the vein areas. So usually as you work on this negative painting, you need a lot of patience and observation. You need to be very careful with your brush strokes, because trying to achieve the light effect of the main subject as you gradually darken the surroundings. This is just a basic approach in negative painting. I'll show a few more. And there it is, completed painting with a very simple approach. I would call this like a first layer of negative painting, because I applied the first layer with a lighter color and then just painted with a darker shade as a second layer, avoiding the vein sketch. And you can see clearly the difference between lifting out pigment and the negative painting. So it's not wrong to apply this. If you want minimal effect, you can use this technique of lifting pigment. But if you want a much more impactful thing that has got vibrancy, then you can opt for the negative painting. So another example similar to this leaf motif, just trying to paint a sunflower motif, okay, without any pre-sketch. Just trying to create some loose impressions of petals. I'm not trying to be very thorough the first layer itself, so I'm going to let this dry. I'll make the adjustments using the negative painting technique. Alright, the sunflower painting is dry now. So I have once again pre-sketched the sunflowers motif, just like how I did for the leaf, so that I would know how to go about painting the darker shades. So to kickstart, I'm going to paint the disc of the sunflower. I don't wish to do a very detailed painting, as long as you get the idea of how the disc of sunflower looks like. Next, I am going to paint the petals that are beneath the first layer of petals. As I said, the negative painting is all about painting the darker value, an orange-like hint, and I'm going to paint the darker petals in between, avoiding the actual petal sketch. I think I start from the top. Okay. So once again, same technique with the first petal that I painted, avoiding the main petals. So by using this technique, you can add more definition to your flower painting, especially the ones that has got a lot of petals, high volume of petals, as in daisy, sunflower, and so on. And often artists find it difficult to create the definition of the entire flower painting. This negative painting technique, obviously you get to define the shape of the entire flower. Just going to extend a little bit of those dark shade onto the middle part of the main petals, the yellow petals, create an impression of folds in the petal. Use a damp brush to just give it some light washes. Okay, I'm going to leave this to dry and come back to make more adjustments. Alright, I'm going to make a third layer of painting of the petals. As you can see here, the tip of the lighter yellow petals are still not defined enough. I'm just going to paint the lowest or the furthest petal in the back. Just casually painting that, and with the appearance of the painting of this petal automatically defines the shape of this petal as well as the petal above it, which is the orange tone petal. Of course, this is not a very perfect sunflower painting. I'm just trying my best to show the impact of a negative painting technique. Alright, I think I'm done with the sunflower illustration, and I believe by darkening the surroundings of the main yellow petals, it's given a new perspective of the entire sunflower. Let's add more dimension to it. Instead of looking just plain flat painting, it has given it a three-dimensional look. Another thing that I would like to highlight is, remember the darker orange spots that I applied around the disc onto the yellow petals and give it a light wash. You can see now, as I made the light wash, it resulted in a hard line of a darker tone within these yellow petals itself, and this gives it another dimension as well, as in a folded petal. If you would notice the petals that are curled up a bit inwards, so I could notice that effect taking place, and you can clearly distinguish between this darker shade and the lighter yellow shade on the corners. So that gives it a new look, and this is how negative painting works overall. So looking at this current painting, what do you see? You can assume there is a trail of hills, but I couldn't be sure, or it may look like a sea wave. So what is it? So this is when the negative painting takes an important role to change the perspective in what we see or visualize. So I'm just going to paint a darker shade. As a second layer of trail of mountain or a cluster of hills. Now for the third layer, I'm using an even more darker shade. Once again, I'm going to leave this to dry. Finally, I have mixed some black with sapphire to get the darkest value. I am pretty sure by now, as I gradually increase the amount of pigment and painted the various definition of hills and mountains on this painting, you could see the changes in the original value of the painting, which was a plain flat view of an undefined subject, but by adding more darker values and shapes as I apply the negative painting technique, you could now have a new vision, a new perspective of the entire painting, where you could see there is a mountain in the distance which has the lightest color in the entire painting, followed by the second mountain cluster which is getting nearer to your vision, and as you move to the darkest value, this is the nearest point to where you are viewing it from or standing from. And yes, this works for hills because normally hills are an open space. You have the entire sky with the natural light, so you get a lot of illumination. Yes. The further you go, the subject matter appears to be lighter, and the nearer you are to the subject, it appears darker. So this is how you can apply negative painting to have a better perspective and to define the distance. So for the third example, it's going to be similar to the mountain painting. However, this is more focused on a narrow area of a scenery, as in a forest or bush where there is lesser natural light, which means you have shade, and it's not an open area as in the peak of a mountain or valley, because the perspective changes when you have lesser light source. Okay. So these are actually an outline. Hope it looks like a bush, and I'm going to avoid painting this area. I'm not going to worry about the shape that is appearing on the top, as long as the bottom part stays lighter, because I can adjust this top part with a darker shade later. Alright, I think by now you can notice this resembling some tall grasses and some uneven bushes. So as a second layer, as usual, I've made a much more darker shade. Another tip is to make sure your painting is completely dry before you attempt the second layer or third layer as you progress in your painting. Paint the surrounding. Because I should also remember to avoid the push effect that I created earlier. Okay, so it can be a bit challenging, but it's interesting as it changes the way you see things. You pay more attention to shapes, lights and shadow. As you paint, you can adjust the light and dark areas as well. You don't necessarily have to follow the outlines. It's all a matter of creativity, your observation mainly. So as I paint, I've left, it was not pre-sketched, so I thought of leaving that place empty, so that it creates an impression of a broken tree where only the tree trunk is visible. As I said, you can go about spontaneously as you paint. So while I wait for the forest painting to dry, just want to highlight to you, I have this hydrangea painting that I posted in my previous last video, and I actually applied the negative painting technique. If you want, you can check that out. I'll leave the link to this painting tutorial on the screen as well as in the description section, though I did not explain step by step as in how to make the apply the negative painting technique, but the negative painting technique helped me to achieve a dimensional look of this hydrangea painting. Hydrangea has got many petals and similar to the sunflower, so in order to differentiate them from each other and add more realism to the painting, I have applied the negative painting technique, so do check it out. Okay, for the next darkest layer, let's draw more tree trunks. Let's put it in the middle. I can highlight some bushes as well. Yeah, to add more value. So it's another darker tree trunk, and I've left some spaces. Creates an impression of other bushes in the back apart from this first layer of bushes. You notice that this is the tree trunk, it's a background bush. If you want to leave some highlights here and there, go ahead. There can be some tall grasses peeking through and getting some light source shine on it. So the painting is completely dry, and I hope with the negative painting technique you could observe or notice the differences in light values, and you get a perspective of the dark areas of the forest. And as I paint darker, you get the impression of how deep the forest could be. Though it's just a painting, you could see all those darker values at the back. That gives you an impression of how deep the forest trail could be in the back. And this is the lighter value where you're standing nearby to, or the foreground, and the background gets mysterious and dark. So this is how you add value by applying the negative painting technique. So for the last demonstration or example, this is just to show you how creative you can get with your negative painting. And for this I'm going to use the wet on wet technique. So right now you can see me pre-wetting the empty area of the paper with some clean water. I'm going to drop in some random colors. It's just a casual abstract like painting, experimenting with various colors. And you're mixing them with other colors. You don't want it to end up muddy. Just a drop of turquoise here and there, because it's a pre-wet surface, so you can just go about dropping those colors. Okay, so I'm going to leave this to dry and proceed with the next step. Okay, now this is the result of the wet on wet painting that I did earlier. So it's fully dry, and in order to proceed to the next step to apply the negative painting technique, I have pre-sketched some motifs here, which is a starfish as well as a seashell or clam. Just a simple basic sketch. And I'm not sure if you could also notice some weird stains. This is actually masking liquid. So unfortunately my masking liquid has dried up. That's the problem working with masking liquid. I used to have in a form of tube, and if you don't use masking liquid fast or do not store them well, I've tried my best to store them in a cool dry place, however it somehow dries up and becomes like rubbery texture. And this one's still liquidy. I bought it 1 year ago. So it has got these metal balls or sphere similar to the one in your liquid paper correction liquid or in the nail polish, where it ensures that the liquid inside does not dry up. However, once you finish your work, somehow the debris or build up accumulates and dries up somewhere inside the cap where the liquid is supposed to flow out, as well as the nib of the marker. So I had a hard time trying to remove them, but after several attempts of cleaning up the build-up, it managed to ooze out. However, it was not that smooth, so it actually tarnished. I'm supposed to apply in the shape of fish, mini fish. However, it didn't work out. I applied some dots. So you can do the same thing, same approach, by applying masking liquid before you make the next layer of painting. So in order to proceed with the negative painting, I have mixed some indigo. A darker color would be the best way to go with this. You can use black, sapphire, anything that's of darker shade. And I'm not going to worry too much about the masking liquid because that's the purpose. It is supposed to create some light effects. So you can just paint over your masking liquid. You can notice here. Now I can notice this unknown shape is supposed to be a fish, but it's okay. But the purpose is to keep the layer underneath dry or waterproof from the paint. Alright, so the painting is dry. So if you'd like to add more effects, for example, lifting out some pigment to create some highlights, similar to the one that I showed on the leaves painting, you can do so. Yep. And let's say you want to paint some fine lines. So I just made a light gray mix. Hope you get the idea of it. And let's remove the masking liquid. I hope it doesn't tear my painting. It is supposed to reveal some colors underneath, which was the first layer of my painting. Unfortunately, I'm seeing more white, which means it is eating up or tearing up my paper. Yep, this is fine because it rails the paint underneath. But I just wanted to show you in this demonstration. Otherwise I hardly use masking liquid. Paint like an eyeball, as if this is a fish. Yep, it's the most abnormal looking fish, I guess. Okay, so there is a result of negative painting, and yes, I added some birds in the background to enhance the look of this painting. You can use a pen or any type of liner. Waterproof would be the best, since it's a watercolor painting. Not necessarily you need to finish up your painting with paints. You can finish them up with some lines using liners, waterproof liners. I've also added rocks and some creeping plant hanging over the branches and tree trunks, just to add more value to the entire negative painting. So I hope with this entire demonstration using various methods and techniques, you could get a clear view of what a negative painting is all about, and go ahead, experiment them yourself. If you like this video, do give me a thumbs up and share with your family and friends. And if you have become a fan of my work, do subscribe to my channel and spread the word. Thanks a lot for your support. See you again in the next tutorial. Bye.